So before we get started on the low poly, we need to go ahead and prepare our scene for the low poly. So the first thing I want to do is create a new save and just add an ID suffix. So what does that mean? We just save armor underscore ID. So what we want to do now is we're gonna add poly paint to this. First thing we need to do is we need to clear all the poly paint. You can do this by going to flat color. And we can say fill object, make sure we have mRGB selected. That's gonna clear it. Then we go to the next one and do the same. And we just repeat that for all the subtools. You also find like scripts online to do this for every subtool. I'm just doing it like this to make sure that you can follow along. We usually have a script for this because it's super annoying to do it. If at some point the subtool doesn't want to clear the poly paint, it's because you have a layer. So we start off completely white. Let's switch back to the basic material. Also, I'm gonna hide the mannequin because we're not gonna be focusing on that. We're just gonna be focusing on the armor. So the first thing that we're gonna do is actually assign a different color to each different material. So what does that mean? Our armor is all gonna share like the same material and the texture. So we can give this a red color. Then we can say, okay, all these rivets are gonna have a metal, but we probably want to be able to select them separately, maybe make them a little bit lighter. So I'm going to give them a yellow color. And we'll probably say all the ones that are on the ladder, we might want to be able to select them separately. So we're going to give them a purple color. So all that we're doing is we're creating selections. So everything that has a unique color, we can select separately in Substance Painter. For example, the rough ladder, we want to be able to select separately from the like nice shiny ladder. Stitches are an exception. We're going to give them the same color as what they're stitching. This will make sense later on. Let's take all the buckles. Let's give them like a purple color. That's looking good. Now this video is going to be a little bit like more complicated. And it's going to be a lot of like vague IDs, like an ID map and whatever baking groups. For now, if you don't understand something I'm doing, don't worry about it. It will become clearer when we do the textures and the bakes. So the next thing that I want to go ahead and do is I want to separate my subtool groups into bake groups. So what does that mean? Everything that needs to be baked separately from each other needs to be in its own folder. So for example, we have 4 metal plate pieces and we're going to need to bake them as 4 different pieces because we're going to be creating 4 different low poly meshes for them. And the way a bake works is we basically look at the high poly detail that we have and then we project that on the low poly. So our low poly looks detailed. But if we were to try to bake all of these plates together in one group, we'd have the details of like this top piece projecting to the piece at the bottom, which is going to cause a lot of strange looking projection errors. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and separate this into separate groups. So first we're going to call this armor 01. We're just going to make a duplicate of the group. You can find it, duplicate. This is going to be armor 02. So we're going to be hiding the top pieces. I'm going to say delete hidden. And make sure I don't have layers. Whenever you do a delete hidden, you want to be on the lowest subdivision. So now, if we are to bake this down, pretty much what happens when we bake this is Marmoset or Painter takes your low poly and it does this. It does an inflate and it looks for like where your low poly mesh is. So if we were to do this over here, you can clearly see that the top and the bottom piece start intersecting. So that's going to cause an issue. But if we do this right here, you can see the front and the back piece don't intersect. So we can keep those in the same group. Now let's do the same here. Let's go ahead and bake the layers. Also, there's many like different ways to set this up. My preferred way is just to match the baking folders in the final ZBrush. So you have the same folder structure in ZBrush, Maya, and in Marmoset. To me, it's the most like organized way to work. And this might look a little bit complicated, and you might be thinking, hey, how do I know like what to put in what baking folder? But if you've done this a few times, it's super easy and you won't have to think about it twice. So we've got our armor set up. So I'm just going to hide those folders so we can focus on the rest. Then we have all these bolts. We're going to need to go ahead and separate those again. Because again, we're going to be using this as a low poly, like the actual mesh. The other ones we're going to bake down. So I'm going to do another split hidden. We're just going to be moving this inside armor 1. We can move this inside, actually should be in armor 2, my bad. It's going to be too close as well to it. Like again, if we were to like inflate this, you can see it starts intersecting, so it can cause some issues. So let's just be safe and create a new folder. It's always a good idea to like just add new folders for different elements. It's just like the more folders you add, the more like you have to set up, which can be annoying. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the buckles. I'm going to hide the straps for now. Also, I'm going to move this into the straps group. So the buckles are going to be very easy. First thing I'm going to do is just merge everything down. Whenever you're merging down, make sure you have UV enabled. So the first thing we have to do is start separating these pieces. I'm just going to do outer groups, merge similar groups. Let's first do an outer groups and then do merge similar groups. See if that works well. Not really. Let's go back to the outer groups. As I'm going to be deleting half of this, the symmetry, just so we have less work. Then we can just go ahead and merge that down later. Mirror and weld that later. Delete hidden. We're just going to be hiding all the high poly meshes. So now we split. And take the low poly. We're just going to move that all the way out. And let's call this a low. Like we're going to delete this as soon as we import it in Maya. Again, I'm going to rename the folder. Let's call this buckle 01. Now we're just going to be taking these tiny little pieces that are going to be intersecting. We hide them. Let's do a Ctrl W to create a group, invert it, and do another one. I'm going to duplicate the subtool, create a new folder called buckle 02, and delete hidden. And let's invert it and delete hidden over here. So buckles are separated, the armor is separated, that just leaves the straps. First thing I want to do is I just want to delete the subdivisions on this stuff, because this is going to get quite annoying. I think that's all. Also, let's go ahead and apply the, we already did. Let's delete subdivisions. Okay. First things first, let's rename straps 01. So let's use the strap 01 for all the top straps. Like all these straps exist out of two straps, like we have strap 1 and strap 2. Let's Ctrl W and Ctrl W. I'm gonna duplicate and delete hidden. Should have deleted the layers first. So we have our top ones. And the other one, let's delete the layers. This one's gonna be our bottom ones and delete hidden. Let's take our bottom ones, move it to the end of the group. Then we can say new folder and call this straps 0, 2. This is already separated out. That's nice. So we can just move this to straps 1. Then move the other one to straps 2. I think that should be it. If we hide straps 2. Okay, and not completely yet. We need to separate this stuff up. Do a split hidden. This one can stay. And this one needs to go to straps 2. Now finally we need to go ahead and do the stitches. Stitches can be a little bit annoying to select. Usually select lasso is pretty good for this. That's looking good. So again, let's do a split hidden. This stuff needs to go to straps 2. Because again, we're separating the top straps from the bottom ones. And we want to keep all these bolts over here, because we're going to be baking that down onto the straps mesh. So when we do the low poly, it's going to look something like this. And we're not going to be capturing the rivets with geo. So we're going to bake that. Let's see. It's always a good idea to just kind of double check. So straps 1's looking good. Straps 2 looks good to go. We forgot to mirror and weld. It's going to be the same over here, mirror and weld. So yeah, that's going to be it. Let me just unhide everything. Now we successfully set up our ID map and our baking groups. And I really like to do this like all the way at the beginning before even starting the low. Because whenever we're doing retopology, especially in complex meshes, there's a lot of like thinking about, okay, what meshes am I going to merge together? For example, the rivets and the straps and whatever. And I want to figure everything out before I even touch the low poly. Because I don't want to be creating the low poly too fast. And then halfway through, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have merged this mesh together with this. So it's better to think about it for a while when we're preparing to do the low poly, instead of when we're actually doing the low poly. So depending on like how many polygons you have and how good your compute is, you might need to decimate this before you export. In my case, it's okay. I can just bake this down. It's not too much. So we're going to go ahead and export everything out. You can go to Subtool Master. Make sure everything's visible that you want to export. Just going to do the mannequin as well. I'm going to say export. Then there's going to be some settings. Keep this as OBJ and enable export to folders. I'm going to go to our project folder. Let's do a new folder called Mamo from Mamaset. Let's call a new folder, create a new folder called meshes. And finally another folder called high for our high poly meshes. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to do an underscore as the name and save. And this is going to go ahead and export all of our visible subtools. So after that's done, you'll have like your folder structure that you have in ZBrush back in your Windows Explorer. This is very nice because now we have our folder structure everywhere. Like it's very set in the project what our baking groups is going to be, and it's very organized. And for example, if we go inside, you can see each subtool is its own OBJ file. It could be a good idea to rename the subtools as well so they have better names, but it's not needed. So now we're going to need to do the same more or less, but this time with the idea of getting it in Maya and retopologizing on it. So my favorite way of doing this, I'm just going to hide all the polypaint. Also when you export, make sure the polypaint is visible, otherwise it won't export the polypaint. So for each folder, I want one mesh. So we're just going to be merging everything down. And disable UV just to keep it fast. So again, we're basically collapsing all the layers. And ignore the mannequin, just like that. We're going to be putting this in Maya, and Maya is definitely not going to like this poly count. So what we're going to do is decimation master, and we're going to say preprocess all. That's going to preprocess all the subtools in the scene. So when that's finished, we can just go ahead and say decimate all. I'm going to bring this all the way down to something low, like maybe 5. And say decimate all. After it's done, just check the mesh. You can already see we're having one slight issue. So if you have something that like messes up a lot, just undo it. So let me hide the mannequin. This is all looking good to go. So when that's done, we're just going to go to C plugin, in the subtool master. Say export. Same settings as before. Say oh. I'm going to go to the same folder. I'm going to call this high decimated for retop. Again, we're going to do an underscore and just say save. And that's going to be it. Also, on a really quick note, when we did the first export of the high meshes, make sure that you're on the highest subdivision of all your subtools, so you get the best quality on the bake. So now what we want to do on our second screen, just have like your stuff open where you can see the folders that we need. I'm going to be creating some new folders. So Ctrl G to create a group. First, let's call this bake underscore group. Do a duplicate. Let's call this high group. And finally a low group. Actually, let's keep the low away for now. I'm going to create a new group. Let's call this armor 01. Let's duplicate it 3 times. Make sure the order is looking good. Then let's do a buckle. And then finally our straps. Now we're just going to be importing our pieces. Actually, before we put them in the right folders, let's make a duplicate of this and call this the low group. Let's take both of these group and just put them in the bake group. Then we're going to be starting to fill our groups. So just going to go one by one, import the meshes and put them in the right group. Now again, if you're working on like a full character, you probably want to have like some script to do this, because it's a little bit faster. But for simplicity's sake, we're just gonna do it one by one. And finally, let's go ahead and adjust some of the settings of the Maya scene. First thing I like to do is just open this up. Go to anti-aliasing. First, let's enable that and then put it to 16. Turn this off. Finally, go to perspective. I'm going to put the focal length to something like 65. So we have a little bit less perspective. Then let's take our high group, create a layer from selected. Call this high underscore layer. Same thing for the low. Low layer. Then we're just going to be setting the wireframe color to black. And that's it. Now we have our Maya all set up, ready to retopologize. Again, I'm going to be working with Maya, but same principles apply to all the software. Feel free to follow along in Blender or any other software of choice. So now that we have everything set up, let's go ahead and get started with the low poly. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with taking the low polys we already did. I'm going to be placing them in the Maya scene. So we're going to go back to ZBrush. I'm going to take our low poly buckles. Let's also go ahead and mirror and weld and just export that. Then back in Maya, let's go ahead and import. Then let's go ahead and put these in the right group. So the first thing we're going to do is go to mesh. Also to go here, hold down spacebar, mesh, and separate. I'm going to go into solo mode for this. Also let's apply a proper material. Just going to do Lambert. If it's super white, just go to render. Put this to 1, the intensity. So also go ahead and apply a standard Lambert to everything. Just go ahead and hide the high for now. So I'm going to be taking all our buckles, mesh, and we do a combine. Now we're going to delete the history. That's in edit, delete by type history. Go ahead, take the high. Let's take a look what group that is. So that should be in buckle 1. Just gonna use our layers here. So we're gonna disable the high. We take this and we put it in armor 01 of the low. Now this one is done. What I usually like to do is I like to go to display, use outline color. Then we can add a yellow color. For me, a yellow color means it's done, but the UVs need to be done. I'm gonna take all these other meshes and do another combine. And delete the history. This should be buckle 2. Also, we moved it in the wrong group. It should be buckle, not armor. By using outline colors, it becomes very easy to spot where you are in the low poly. So it's pretty nice to do. Now let's go ahead and repeat this for the armor, for the little bolts, which is armor 3. So back to ZBrush, and we take our bolts. Let's go to the lowest subdivision, and then just export that. Back in Maya, import, and that's it. Again, I'm going to be applying our Lambert 1. I'm going to go to the UV editor. If you remember when we were doing the high poly, we set up some quick UVs, because we don't need all the back faces. This is going to add a lot of topology, and you're never going to see it. So right now, if we take a look, we have 5,000 triangles, which is a lot. Go ahead and hide the high for now. Also, if you don't have this section, you go to display. And where is it? Heads up display, and just turn on poly count. This is going to be important, so you can see how much tries you actually have. So we're just going to go to UV shell. That's by right-clicking the mouse. I'm going to select the island. So these are all the back islands, and we're just going to delete that. Now we just got 2.6K, which is, to be fair, still a lot, but since it's portfolio piece, it's okay. Then we're just going to be moving this in armor 03. Also, to switch this from the channel box to the attribute editor, hit Ctrl A as in all. And that's going to be it for all our low polys that are prepared in ZBrush. If you really want to, you could take the first subdivision of the armor as a low poly, because it's pretty nice and clean. But for the sake of the tutorial, and also just to get it more clean, I'm gonna do it from scratch, so we learn how to do it. Because you don't always have a proper first subdivision. So doing a low poly, it's pretty easy, and it's always the same workflow more or less. So for this tutorial, we're just going to be focusing on the main chest plate. And then we're going to be speeding up all the other plates as it's all the same. So first things first, let's go ahead and hide all our groups, except for armor 01. Just select it and go here to this magnet and make this selected object live. So now we can go ahead and snap vertices to this object. My personal recommendation is to use a tablet for this, although I do know a lot of people don't like it, but give it a try. So just click here to go to the modeling toolkit, go to quad draw, and then we can just put a point down, and there will be a vertex. If we put 4 down, we can shift, and we can click to connect it and turn it into a quad. I'm gonna go ahead and click reset settings. This is how your polygon is gonna look like. So in order to make this a little bit more readable, like if we do something like this, it's not very nice to see, because we cannot see the high poly through it. So what I recommend is that you go to Tool Settings, Live Constraint Options, then the wireframe overlay. I like to put this to a light bluish color, just to get it a little bit more light. I don't like the black edges on this. Something like that. Mesh color. Just gonna make this a little bit more bluish and lighter. Then the important thing is the mesh alpha. I like to put this down quite a lot. So now we can actually see our high poly through it, which is very nice and useful, as you can see. So okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete this. You can delete this by holding down Ctrl Shift. That way you can delete a face, an edge. We we always need one, so let's keep that one there. Actually, let me just delete the object to start fresh. So again, quad draw. Now I would recommend to start out with the edges. So we want to go from big to small shapes. But what does that mean? We're going to be capturing very big polygons. By capturing very big polygons, it's very fast and easy to define the flow. For example, we put 4 here and 4 there. Then we can just do something like this. Now we have our basic flow in here. Hold down Shift to relax the polygons so they become more evenly spaced. This is very important. You always want to try to space out your polygons nice and evenly. Then let's go ahead and do 3 over here. And I'm not doing 4 because this area, it's smaller than this. So I'm trying to keep the density nice and even. And again, at this point we're aiming to get a nice flow and have the polygons be more or less evenly sized. Of course, like the edge ones are going to be a lot smaller than the middle ones. For example, these are super big, so I'm just going to cut in between. To cut in between, hold down Ctrl, that way you can insert an edge. If you hold down Ctrl Shift, again, that's how you delete, so you can delete an edge. Just going to insert one more. And you can see how easy it is to find a flow when we're working with little polygons. With big polygons and like a little amount of polygons. Only awkward areas there. I'm just gonna go ahead and select all that, double click and say fill hole. And this is the most difficult part. Doing this initial like pass where you define the flow and try to make the polygons nice and even. So this is a very low poly count. Nowadays, like you don't really go that low on poly count anymore, but still good to start off with a very low base again, so the flow can be easily defined. And then to get our actual low poly, we're going to do a subdivision. It's going to go ahead and hide the high so we can see what we're doing. Let's go ahead and apply Lambert 1. And we're going to go smooth mesh by hitting 3, and then page down to have a subdivision less or more. Page up, more subdivision, page down, less. So the first thing that you might notice is this becomes super smooth. Just like in ZBrush, we can use a crease. So I'm going to select everything that I want to be creased. Then we go to Windows, Modeling, and Crease Sets. Then just say New. Now you can see if we smooth that out with a subdivision, it's going to stay nice and sharp. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to go to Modify, Convert, and Smooth Mesh Preview to polygons. Just Ctrl Shift click that to add it to the shelf. I'm going to delete that as I already have it here. Then we're just going to click that. Now we can see how our actual topology is going to look like. So you can see first we had an n-gon over there. The second that we smooth mesh that with a subdivision, that looks very nice and clean, the flow. So at this point, you just kind of want to look at how the flow is going and if there's something that you don't like. I'm going to click this so we can always see the wireframe. Also, let's go ahead and move this to Armor 1. And the only thing that I don't like is how this polygon here flows. I think it's a very ugly pool. So we're just going to undo that. So we're back here. Put this to Armor 01 again. Now we're just going to go ahead and delete that. And we're going to mess around a little bit more with the flow. So unhide that. Also, I would recommend to go to Preferences. Go to Color Settings. Then we want to go to Inactive. I think it's in Modeling. Yep, Live. Just click this and put the alpha way down. So that way you don't see the wireframe of your live object, which is going to be your high poly. So back to Quad Draw. Let's try to figure out a better flow for this. Maybe like this. This takes a little bit of back and forward, like just try different things if you have to, and then convert it and see how that looks. I think that looks a lot cleaner, the flow. I'm pretty happy with that. I can say that's good to go. So now we're going to go ahead and clean up this subdivision a bit. So now we're going to go ahead and clean this subdivision up a little bit. Also, if you want, like if you want to go quite extreme, you could do another subdivision. Although I wouldn't recommend it for game, but if you really want to, you can add as many as you want. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So the first thing I want to pay attention to is how even are our polygons. For example, if we take a look at the distance from here to here, this is bigger than here to here. Ideally, everything has exactly the same length. Easy way to clean this up further, select it, shift right mouse click, and say edit edge flow. And then you just go edge by edge and you do that. And you hit the G key to repeat the last action, so the edit edge flow. G as in Geralt, that one. Usually I just kind of go over all my edges and edit the edge flow out. This is just going to ensure that everything's a little bit nicer and more even. And usually this is all the cleanup work that you really have to do. Some edges you kind of go over multiple times until it's nicely, evenly laid out. You can see how nice and clean that looks. And that's because we started off with a really nice low base, do a subdivision, and everything just gets nicely smoothed. Okay, so at this point everything's nice and even. We can go ahead and delete these extra edges. We don't need them. This way the topology also gets a little bit more even. So now that everything's nicely laid out, we want to go ahead and worry that we actually capture the shape. So I'm just going to take all the vertices, axis normal. You go here by holding down W, left mouse click, you can change the axis. So by going to normal, you can push this out like an inflate. Just gonna inflate this a little bit, make sure everything's kind of on top. Then we can take some of these with a soft select, hold down B, left mouse click to increase the size of that, B to activate soft select. We're just gonna push some out a bit more. So right now we're missing an important feature. The important features to capture are the low points. So over here and our high points, which is our crease in the middle. So I'm going to go back to quad draw. I'm going to take the closest edge to our feature and just line that up. Just like that. Again, shift, we can go ahead and smooth that out, which is going to make it more even. You can combine that with just going here and saying edit edge flow. And by using that shift and edit edge flow, we'll get to a really nice clean topology. You just kind of go back and forward on those and then adjust again. Again, I'm making sure to capture that feature. So again, paying close attention to where that low point is. Making sure that all those vertices are on the right place. I also want to push all these out until they hit the edge. You always want to be like a little bit more careful about the edges that follow features and then the edges at the border. And if you make sure that those are right, everything's just kind of going to fall in place. Sometimes you get like a vertex that's like under the high poly, as you can see. This one. In that case, if you smooth it out, nothing really happens. Then you just go to vertex and you push it out. Just so it's on top, and then you can snap it again to the high. As you can see another one, just pop it out. Which is pretty annoying to do, but there's no other choice. At least not that I know of. That's it. Now we've cleaned up our geometry to match the high poly. So once you're at the point where you're happy with how it looks, we can go ahead and proceed to the last step, pretty much, which is going to be adding thickness. In my opinion, the easiest way to do this, just select everything, say Ctrl E as in extrude. Again, the E, this one, as an extrude. And then just push the blue arrow down, just like this. Make sure it captures nicely. And that's it. If we take a look at this, this will turn your whole mesh black, meaning that the normals are inverted. So you want to go to mesh display and reverse the normals. Then we're just going to take the symmetry over here and delete all those faces. So now we got some quick thickness. So the next thing is going to be like a little bit more complicated. It's going to be shading of the mesh. So what is shading? It's like telling the mesh how it should react to light. So if we turn off the wireframe, the way it works in Maya is we have hard and soft edges. Over here you can see this very harsh line because it's a hard edge. All of this looks nice and smooth because it's a soft edge. Every low poly you ever make will need shading. The easiest way to shade a mesh is to go to mesh display and start off with everything soft. I'm not going to go too deep into like shading, just remember the basic is a soft edge is cheaper than a hard edge, that's all. And usually it looks better when you have more soft edges than hard edges. My personal opinion is avoid hard edges if you can, unless you have a UV cut anyway. So what does that mean? Shading and unwrapping goes hand in hand, in my opinion. So while I'm doing the shading, I'm also doing the unwrapping. So first step, make everything a soft edge. Then I'm going to select everything, do mapping, normal based mapping. So that's shift, right mouse button, click mapping, normal based mapping. Let's also go ahead and delete the crease, so we don't have these thick lines over here. Windows, modeling and crease sets, and just click this and delete. So how does bad shading look like? Bad shading is when you have a very black gradient on your mesh. So if we take a look here, on the side, you can see that half of the face has this super black looking gradient. That's exactly what we want to avoid. Especially when you have like a reflective material, this is gonna pop up more. So the way that we can avoid a black gradient is by selecting it and making it a hard edge. Now you can see the black gradient disappears. Now looking at this, you might think this looks super soft, like our high poly, way harder. So you might think, okay, we're gonna need to put that as a hard edge as well. But that's wrong in my opinion, because the normal map will also fix some of the shading. It's like the mesh shading is the base of telling your mesh how to react to light, and then your normal map will go into further detail. See, that's like the mesh shading is the primary, and then the normal map is the secondary. So you can fix smaller things. Go back to our low. So again, I'm gonna make everything soft. And the reason why I say shading and UVs go hand in hand, it's because if you put a hard edge, you have to put a UV cut. Otherwise you're gonna get a bake error. So looking at this mesh, we know that we have a shading issue, the black gradient. And we know that we need a UV cut because we cannot unfold it like this. So we know that, okay, this would be an ideal place for a UV cut, because if we put a hard edge here, we fix the shading. And also it's a good place for a cut, because you don't see it as much as if we were to do it over here. So based on that, we can choose, okay, we're going to put a hard edge here, because it needs a hard edge for the shading. And then because we have a hard edge, we have to put a UV cut there, but we already want the UV cut there anyway. Little confusing, I know. Feel free to go back in the video, listen to it again, and try to really comprehend it, because that's the only thing that you need to know about shading, and will always pop up over and over again. So it's very important that you know. Now, one thing not to be confused is, let's say if we need a UV cut over here, having a UV cut doesn't mean that we need to put a hard edge. We only need to put a UV cut on hard edges. We don't need to put a UV cut and a hard edge. You can just have a UV cut and that's it. But you cannot have a hard edge without a UV cut. Again, a little confusing, but over time you'll get used to it and it will be very self-explanatory. So we're just going to select all these edges and then do cut and then do a hard edge. So right now we have good shading, and if we go here, we separate this and unfold this. This is under tool, unfold. If we unfold this, we'll also get a nice looking UV. Now I want to make this a little bit nicer. Now I want to make this look a little bit nicer by capturing our high poly a little bit better. Whenever you do like a low poly and you have like these very like sharp corners, it looks a little ugly. And we can fix that really easily. I'm going to delete the history on this. I'm going to go to Quad Draw. Let's also move this a little bit, capture that edge better. So all we're going to do is we're going to take this vertex over here and go to here. And we're going to cut a triangle like this. And we're going to do the same on the back, just like that. Then we take this point and we cut like this. Then we're going to do the same over here. Just hit enter to accept that. Now we can go ahead and try to capture this roundness a little bit better. This will like help a lot on making like your meshes look a lot more high poly than they actually are. We're just going to be repeating this for every corner that we have. I just want to make sure that some of these edges are a little bit better aligned. I don't really care about all the edges like over here. I just want to make sure that our main features are aligned. And our borders, of course. Instead of taking the vertex, you can just select the edge. So snap two verts in one go. We'll go a little bit faster. Go ahead and check out how the shading looks on that. That's not too bad. You can see how much nicer that looks. It looks a lot more like we're capturing the actual shape. And that's looking good. Now as a final step, let's go ahead and get some symmetry. So symmetry is really easy to add back. All that we're going to do is double click the border over here. Go to R, for scale, make sure you're on world. Now I want to disable live, so we're not snapping to the high poly. Just go to front view and pull that straight. Then what we want to do is go ahead and hide the high. Just want to make sure this is exactly on the 0. Just like that. Now we can go to mesh. I'm going to say mirror. Then make sure to put this to plus. That's it. You can see the shading is a little strange. First thing that we're going to check is this merged. And it's not. So we're just going to select all these vertices. Merge vertices. Again, that's shift right mouse click, merge vertices. Easy way to check if it merged correctly is just hit 3 as a smooth mesh preview. And if that looks nicely smoothed, it means they're all nicely welded. And you can see that we have something strange in the shading. If we go to mesh display, we can say soften and harden edges. If we go to display polygons and we go soften hard edges. Actually, there's a better one for this. It's gonna say reset display, polygons and hard edges color. This will show all our hard edges in purple. So you can see we have our hard edges on the UVs and then we have these weird ones over here. We're just going to select that, shift right click, soften hard edge and soften edge to make that nicely smoothed. Just gonna take this and do a edit edge flow. So it looks a little bit nicer. Maybe not that one. Again, if we do an edit edge flow, it will mess a little bit with the shape, so we need to go ahead and fix that up if needed. Go ahead and make this live. Also turn off symmetry, it's W, left mouse click to go to symmetry. If you have a lot that are inside, you can just select all of them at once and move them. Again, this happens because we do an edit edge flow. This is kind of what you always do when making a low poly. You edit edge flow and you go back and forward to smooth out the flow. And then to match the high again. I think I like those smoothed out. Okay, so the last thing that we need to do is I want to capture this a little bit better. Just like the corners, this is very rounded, so we should be adding some extra topology. Now the easiest way is just go like this. Just cut in 2 extra triangles there. Now whenever you do any like small type of triangle, this can mess a little bit with the shading. Let's see if we get like a bad shading on this. Yeah, you can see it's not too bad, but we get kind of an ugly shading. But again, the normal map can compensate for that. But whenever you get like a shading that looks a little bit like ugly, you can always try to mess a little bit with the topology. For example, in this case, it's okay, it's not too bad. But if it's really bad, you could say, okay, what if we cut an extra edge here? Then maybe we try something like this. So what this does is it will hopefully push the pinching a little bit better. We can take a look at that. Okay, how does that look? I think that looks a little bit nicer. You can always just push it out more if needed. The less tight this triangle is going to get, the better the shading is going to get. If you get like in a situation where it just keeps looking ugly, you could say, okay, maybe I'm going to try something like this. Sometimes it takes like a little bit of exploring until like you get something that you like. Now in our case, I think this works perfectly fine. The shading is nice and smooth. Sometimes easier to turn this off, so you can get the vertices exactly where you want. Now I don't care for the vertices to be like perfectly like where I want them to be everywhere. For example, for these, I don't really care if they're not like exactly at the nicest point. But whenever like you have an edge around the neck is where you're gonna be like looking a lot. So you want to pay extra like attention to where those vertices are to try to match the shape as close as possible. But again, this is very time consuming. So I wouldn't recommend it like you get this precise about each and every vertex on the mesh, because that will take forever. But again, it's worth it if it's like a neck area. I'm just doing like some final checks, seeing if there's like any outrageous vertices. For example, this will be an outrageous vertex, like we're so far away from a high poly. And if you find one, then just kind of move it into place. And with low polys, it's kind of like, don't try to aim for like 100% perfect low poly, because that's impossible. Try to aim for like 90% and that's fine. Like it's not worth the time of going like every vertex, okay, let's put that in the perfect spot and maybe here, zoom in, maybe a little bit up. Like it's not worth it. That will take so much time to do for every vertex. For example, that one's really bad, so that one we fix up. If you can't spot it from a distance, it's probably fine to leave it. You can always come back to the low poly if like you do a bake and you notice that it's baking badly. Again, just paying some extra attention to our feature lines, which are like these low points. Just kind of turning around the mesh, trying to see where stuff is misaligned. For example, over here, it all needs to move in quite a lot. It's looking better. So the final step before I call this piece done, go ahead and hide the high poly. So just gonna go to UV. I'm gonna go ahead and merge this together. So just select it, make sure you get all of that. Shift right click, move and seal edges. And take all the UVs and just unfold it again. And we're not too worried about the UVs yet, but since we already like decided on the islands for the shading, I just want to have like something quick and clean, and then we can refine it later when we do the UVs. That's going to be it. So I'm just going to repeat this process for all the other armor pieces, and that's going to be sped up. Again, if you didn't understand some of the parts that I was talking about, I would recommend that you go back and try to listen to it again, because this is pretty much the workflow that applies to any low poly that you make. I reuse this over and over again, refining the flow, subdividing, deciding on the shading, and you got your low poly. If you can memorize and understand those steps, you can pretty much retopologize anything you want, no matter how complex the object. So now that we're pretty much done with our armor, let's go ahead and move on to the straps. Start with strap 01. Just gonna select a vertex so we can focus the camera on it. And let's get going. Since we do have holes in the geometry here, I want to make sure that I take that into consideration. I want to make those holes like in the middle of each quad. Let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. This is the same as before, we're just going to be doing the edit edge flow. Select all our vertices, inflate it a bit. Now if we select everything and we go to mesh, we can say conform. This is going to snap it to our live surface, so to our high poly. Something like that's not looking too bad. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for all the other straps. You can see that the polys over here are a little bit uneven, they aren't as nice and square. It's more important to keep the holes in the middle instead of doing something like this. So now that we have our base, I'm gonna add one subdivision. Again, page down and up to low and high subdivisions. Then we're just gonna be converting that again. Now let's go ahead and take everything, inflate it a bit to make sure it's on top of the high. And then we can say mesh conform. If a point really messes up like this, shift right click, average, just repeat that by hitting the G key. It's looking pretty good. So now let's go ahead and do these points at the end. Let's go with something like that. I'm going quite dense on these, because I want to be able to capture that curvature nicely over there. I just want to make sure that like I put the topology the same as there for consistency. I'm going to make sure I'm nicely following the feature. And I want to make sure that these holes are kind in the middle. Probably do something like that. Even out the topology a bit. That's probably getting a little bit too low poly. So just going to be adding one back. I'm going to make sure this nicely in the middle. That's not looking too bad. Let's go ahead and repeat that for the others. So that's all matching. Now we need to shift some of these edges a little bit more. We want to have a vertice exactly in the middle of the hole for every hole that we have. So if we don't have a hole, you can for example take this and collapse it. So the vertice is at the middle. And we're just going to edit the edge flow to make that nice and even. If you collapse an edge, make sure you still have enough polygons, so it's nice and rounded. It's looking good. Let's go to the next one. Sometimes it's easier without the live surface, so you can move a little bit more freely and just get it in the middle. Something like that. It's looking good. So now what we want to do is we want to select each and every vertex that's on a hole. Then we're going to shift right click, go to chamfer vertex. Make this a little bit bigger. Something like that. I'm going to make this live again. Then we're going to fix this up. Probably take everything here and just do a quick inflate, push it above the high poly. So let's go ahead and delete all these faces, so we actually get holes. Then just mesh and conform. Now you can choose how low poly you want your stuff to be. You could leave a hole like this, or you could add an extra edge, so it's going to be a little bit nicer and rounder. Now case, we're going to make it nice and rounded. There's not much of a reason not to do it if it's portfolio. If you're doing like an actual game mesh, you probably won't go as crazy on the topology for the holes. And depending on the project, you might not even put this in the low poly at all. You'll just bake down the hole and make it more dark in the texture. I'm going to go ahead and place an edge in the middle here. That's because every other hole has an edge next to it, except for this one. So that's going to keep the topology nice and consistent. That way we also can easily get rid of the n-gons. Just want to take a quick look if all the features are more or less aligned. Again, this doesn't need to be perfect. Just get it like 90% there. Now let's go ahead and add the thickness. Again, same way as with the armor plates, just extrude it inwards. Go ahead and invert. As you see, we're not capturing the shape well. We're missing a lot of stuff. So the way we're going to capture that is we're going to take the edges, double click it to select all of them. Also, let's go back to live. Double click that. Do the same here. Shift right mouse click, connect components. That's going to create this edge in the middle. Then let's just select all of those. To vertices, that's Control right mouse click. Then we're going to put it to the normal axis. We're just going to be pushing that out. Now be quite generous with this, like overshoot it a bit, because we're gonna create a bevel from this. That's gonna bring the height down again. So go to edge, and then bevel. Something like that. Now we're capturing that shape a lot better. So let's talk a little bit about shading. I'm gonna duplicate this as an example. Let's say we didn't have this bevel, and we do our soft all. So mesh display, soften edge. Again, this shading looks horrible. We get this black gradient, and we have a lot of like these triangle lines. So the first thing that we need to do is get rid of that black gradient. And like you've learned with the armor plate, to get rid of a gradient, we can select this edge. It's a little difficult with the triangles. Then we just do harden edge. Well, that's gonna fix that gradient. So to go back to what we have this bevel. A bevel will do the same as a hard edge pretty much. It will fix a gradient. So the way that I like to use bevels and hard edges is very simple. If we put a hard edge, we have to put a UV cut. So for that simple reason, at the back where we're going to be placing the UV cut, we might as well just use a single edge and use a hard edge. That's pretty much my way to like differentiate when I use a bevel and when I use a hard edge. If I need a UV cut there, I'll place a hard edge plus a UV cut. If I don't need a UV cut, I'll place a bevel. But in this case, the main reason why we have the bevel is to better capture the shape of the strap. Because the shading here is fine as well with the gradient. But if we're placing a bevel, I want it to have a little bit more impact. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to put it in the back where we don't really look at it, if that makes sense. So we can go to display, polygons, and hard edges color. Let's go ahead and set up all our hard edges. So again, putting them at the back, since that's where we're gonna put a UV cut. Also a better way of like selecting the border, you can just select the faces, Control right click to edges to edge parameter. Then we can just deselect that one. It's a little bit faster than trying to select each and every single edge. Just like that. So now let's focus on the second problem in the shading. We have all these lines, which isn't very nice. Now you could get away with this, like this is not so extreme that will completely break the mesh, because it's not a reflective mesh. If this was a very shiny metal, this will be a lot worse because it would pop up more. But I just want to make this a little bit more clean. So what we're going to do is we're going to select all these. We can either make them in hard edges or bevels. If you take a close look, like try to see how the light is reacting here to the surface. We use this one, it's kind of doing like this and this and this. It doesn't look very nice and tight. If we put a hard edge, you can see how much nicer that becomes. You can see that looks a lot better already. Again, before, see we have all these lines. Let me just take a quick screenshot. And then the after. You can see how much nicer and cleaner the shading looks. Now just for sake of consistency, we're going to be doing a bevel to fix that shading instead of a hard edge. Just because all the front facing, I already have a bevel. This is kind of up to personal opinion, what you prefer to do. Neither a hard edge or a bevel is wrong, I would say. It's just that like some projects will put like a constraint like, hey, we prefer bevels. Other projects will say, hey, we prefer hard edges. It's whatever. So let's just totally reset the shading. That's going to be faster, I think. Soft shade everything. And let's go ahead and select our edges again. Selecting the wrong one. And again, my personal preference, if you need a hard edge or a bevel to fix the shading, I'm just gonna go over it one more time because it's important. If it's at the front, facing the camera, and you don't need a UV cut, I prefer a bevel. Because if this was a hard edge, generally speaking, it looks a little bit less nice because it's super hard. And then also we need to put a UV cut where it's very visible. It's better to just have that UV cut in the back. But again, there's not really a right or wrong on bevel versus hard edge. It's a preference thing mostly. I just think that it looks a lot better to avoid hard edges where you can see them. Now, a very cool thing that we can do is because with the hard edges, we already defined where the UV cuts should be. So what we can do is we can use a little script to select all the hard edges. Now you can just Google Maya script to select hard edges, or you can copy paste this stuff, like just rewrite it. And then if we click that, it will select all of our hard edges and we can put cut. Also to put a cut is shift right mouse button click. Probably should have mentioned that earlier, just in case. Now we can just do layout UV and unfold that. And we get our UVs pretty much for free. So again, another example of why I think that shading and UVs go hand in hand. Do a quick last check, see how everything's looking. I think we can probably take all of these borders and inflate them a little bit. So I'm just going to take our UV editor. Because if we try to select the edge here, you'll see it will be stopped by the triangles. But in the UV editor, we can just select that border really easily. So to vertices, let's push that out a little bit. Just so we capture the shape a little bit better. And then the final thing, let's go ahead and polish up these corners. So again, they're really mismatching, we're not capturing the shape. This is going to be the same way. Actually, let's just connect this up so that keeps the shading a little bit nicer. Then we just cut in our triangles again. Again, this is a very nice little trick. It adds a little bit of poly count, but not too much. But it makes your mesh look like way more high poly than it actually is. Unless I'm like really constrained on the polygon budget I can use, I'll literally use this for like every like corner that I have in a character. So let's just make this live again. Start matching those points up. Try to not keep them like too tightly together, because we really want to try to capture the roundness of our high poly. So let's have a quick look at before and after. So after, you can see how nice and round that shape gets. If we were to delete this, you can see just how impactful that is. Also, let's make sure that the holes are lining up. If the bevel, you always need to go and adjust that a little bit. You can just select that and scale it down. And finally, let's make sure that the holes at the back also properly placed. Can probably use a little bit more resolution at the ends here. So we're just going to cut in some triangles. Just to make sure we can capture that roundness. That should be it. So now we're just going to go ahead and repeat that for the other straps. So that looks about right. We're just going to be like moving these points like this. Save a little bit on the poly count. Then we can harden that edge. Because that's not going to make a difference in the shading. Because it's a hard edge. So the reason we don't do that at the front. Because take a look at the shading. This looks very nice and soft. As soon as we start doing stuff like that over here, it will just get like a little bit less nice. Like you can start to see we have like some tightening of that light. It's not worth the few tries that you'll save. So final thing, let's go ahead and mirror, and that's done. So for the other straps, it's going to be pretty much the same workflow, so I'm going to be speeding that up. Then to capture the roundness over here, we're just going to be cutting in a little bit of extra geo. Let's go ahead and capture these little stumps. So we're just going to use this edge here to capture the low point. Then we're just going to be cutting in some extra geo to capture that shape. You don't need to go too precise on this because it's in the back. We're just trying to loosely capture it. So we don't want to add too much polish, basically. Next up, let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. As you remember, we're gonna do an insert to capture that shape. But right now, it kind of messes up when we get over here. So we're gonna clean up that topology to make sure that we can actually do this. Just gonna turn off live, hide the high poly. Let's do a quick soften edges. Actually, let's go with soften and harden edges. And let's start cleaning this up a bit. Just like that. Let's also make these a little bit more rounded. Just gonna select all of those. Do a connect components. Actually, if we do a connect tool and put this to 1 by dragging the middle mouse and hit enter, we do the same, but we already have that selected. So now we can do the vertices, normal, and we inflate this a little bit to make sure it's nice and rounded. Let's just connect that up like that. So you can see if we try to select that loop, still not working correctly. We have like the loop continuing wrong. So we need to do it a little bit more manual. Just going to be selecting all this. Just like that. Let's repeat that for all the others. So now we can do a connect. Then we just need to manually connect this up. Like that. So now that we have these nice loops set up, let's go ahead and get our high back. Let's go in solo. We're just going to be selecting them. Show the high. Just like before, to vertices, axis, normal. I'm going to inflate that. Again, we want to make sure that we go over what we need, because this is going to be flattened out when we bevel it. Set that on to edges, contained edges. And then we can just bevel that out. Let's see, it's not beveling. It is, but it's doing a very small bevel. So when that happens, it usually means that there's a messed up edge somewhere. Just try and see if I can spot it. Can't actually seem to find it. That's okay, we can just force it. We can do a bevel and then just put the fraction way up. Maybe like 20. Something like 20 is okay. You can see some of these will start messing up, but we can fix that again by hand. So let's go ahead and fix that up. The important part's like getting the flow. As soon as you have the flow, we can just adjust the low poly and everything falls into place. Like you can see, that's not difficult to do. Also, we can start merging this up a little bit. Save a little bit on that poly count. Actually, let me go back a little bit before we merge that together. Just going back to our bevel. Put that back to 20. And before we start messing with the placement, let's just go ahead and collapse the inner bevel. Just like we did before. Now I want to be careful that we don't collapse that outer edge. Just like that. We also found our area that was messing up the bevel. Just going to delete all of this. You can use the target weld just to fix this up by hand. Just like that. Now we can go ahead and match this up a little bit closer to the high. But before we do that, let's go ahead and define our shading. So again, shading goes hand in hand with UVs. So I'm just taking all those edges on the back that we didn't bevel. I'm taking this part as well to make sure it can unfold itself properly. And every time I place a UV cut, I'm also doing a harden edge. Cut and harden edge. Now we're going to clean this up a little bit. Let's take these. We can do a soften edge, because the shading is still correct without that being a hard edge. Again, we don't need to put a hard edge on a UV cut. We just need to make sure that every hard edge is a UV cut. Just going to turn on hard edges color to double check that. That's all looking good. The shading is looking pretty good as well. A little bit of an issue here, but we'll get to fixing that. The first thing that I want to do is I just want to go ahead and round out the corners again. So I'm going to be following the same workflow as we've been doing for the other straps, for the armor. We're just cutting in triangles. This will also help with the shading. Otherwise you have a little bit of a gradient at the corners. Again, don't have them too tightly together. Make sure we're spacing them out nicely so we actually capture roundness. We're just going to be repeating this for all the other ones. And lastly, let's go ahead and make sure that we're capturing these corners a little bit better. Just something like that will do. This is also going to fix that little bit of a shading issue that we had over there, while also capturing the shape better. We need to make sure that we go ahead and connect these edges up, so we're not left with an n-gon. An n-gon is when you have more than 4 vertices on one face. In general, you just want to avoid them. That should be it. Let's check out the shading. Gonna need to adjust it a little bit. I'll take the UV editor. I'm gonna make sure everything flows nicely. Put a hard edge, cut. I'm gonna move and seal some of these, just to make sure everything flows properly. See, that's looking a lot better. Otherwise we get some awkward shading issues, as you can see. I think that should be it. So shading's looking good. So let's go ahead and test this. So unfold, see how that looks. Lay that out. You can click this to see the stretching, and that's all looking good to go. So now we can just spin around a little bit. Do some of the final fixes, just to make sure everything's nicely aligned with the high poly. And I hope you can see that doing low polish is not too complicated. It's pretty much just doing the same thing over and over again. And then you have like a few areas that are a little bit like more challenging. For example, over here, because we actually need to think about it a little bit. But generally speaking, doing low polish is just the same thing over and over again. It's just a few basic principles that you need to remember. Just like before, on the back side, let's go ahead and save a little bit of geometry. Just do like that. If that happens, it's because you have a vertex selected. Just gonna make sure that that flows a little bit better. I think that's gonna be it. Everything looks pretty proper. Yeah, so let's go ahead and do a quick mirror. Let's move this in the group. So we're almost finished with creating all the low poly. There's gonna be a few little things left. First off, let's go to Windows, Modeling and Crease. Let's just make sure we don't have any creases, which we don't, even though it's showing a crease right here. So if this ever happens, you can just select everything and do new and then delete. That will force the crease to be gone. It's gonna reset the display, so we don't see the hard edges anywhere. Just gonna take a quick look at how all the geo looks together. Everything's looking good. So all we have left to do is fix the shading for the imported things. So for example, right here, we're gonna do a soft. Also, I do think looking at all this geometry together, maybe we went a little bit too high on the bolts. I'm gonna go back to ZBrush. We're just gonna do a reconstruct subdiv. Just to bring that down a little bit, so everything's more in the same poly count. Let's export. And actually, before we do that, let's try one more thing. Just gonna copy this and paste. I'm gonna make a duplicate, go one up. I'm gonna say auto groups by UV. So let's go all the way up and delete lower. I just want to have all the front facing ones. Just like that, invert and delete hidden. So what we can do is we can go to UV decimation master and do a pre-process. For like little things like this, it's pretty nice sometimes to decimate stuff. Because the decimation will try to keep it as low poly as it can, while maintaining the roundness as close as it can. Do something like this. Before we continue, we just want to smooth this all out. So we're going to go to masking, mask by features, just so we don't smooth the border, and do a polish. Maybe a quick polish by features, just to clean up that edge. Let's do another pre-process and decimate it further. See what happened. Disappeared on me. Guess it's back. It was weird. Just gonna try to go as low as we can. Maybe something like this. Right now we have 800 active points. This one we have about 728, but we do have like the back sides here. I think it's still a little bit dense. Maybe we can try 0.6, see what we get. I'd say this is not a bad density. So we're just going to be exporting both of them and see which one we like better. So back in Maya, let's go ahead and import. Let's go compare. So let's take the UVs and delete all the back faces. So we can see we have 670 triangles and 745. We have about the same. So it's a matter of which one we prefer. Go ahead and soft. Do the same here. I'm gonna bring up PureRef so we can take a quick screenshot. Yeah, let's go with the normal one. I think the decimation would be worth it if we were like keeping the poly count a little bit higher. For example, if we did something maybe closer to 1. So let's take a quick look how this looks. So we have our new one. Yeah, that does not look bad. So for example, if we wanted to go like a little bit higher density than this one, we'd have to add one more subdivision, which would result in us being at 2000 triangles, which is a lot. If we compare that to the other one, this one's 1300, so 1000 triangles less. And they look about the same. But since I'm fine with the density like this, we're just gonna keep it like that. It's a cool little trick that I like to use for bolts pretty often. If there's a red, just take everything and say delete selected. So that's going to be it for the bolts. Let's go ahead and move on to the buckles. I'm just going to go in solo mode for the buckles. Go to our UV editor. If you remember, we already set up the UVs. First thing I'm going to do is just do a layout, shift right click. Then we're going to do a soft. So the same over here, layout and soft. Take a look at that shading. Also, we can just go ahead and delete the symmetry. Save ourselves a little bit of work. So if we take a look at the shading, you'll see that we have some black gradient stuff going on. This one's not bad. This one is perfect as it is. But the main buckles, you can see this gradient happening over here. with the gradient going up to here. So since we already prepared the UVs and we thought about this when we were doing the high poly, we can just select the borders. All we need to do is say harden edge. Now that's looking a lot more clean. That's going to be it for the buckles. And that's pretty much going to finish up our low poly. Now the only thing that's left to do is to refine the UVs a little bit and to lay them out nicely packed together. So let's go ahead and get started on the UVs. I'm going to go to the UV editor. We're just going to do a layout UV, just so we have everything in the same UV space. And let's start off with armor 1. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to make sure that everything is nice and straight to begin with, just so we're working with a nice base. All this stuff I'm just going to lay out UV and put it to the side, since I don't want to be messing with a lot of little UVs for now. For the straps, let's go ahead and delete half of them. That will make sense in a second, because we need to go ahead and adjust the UVs of the straps. For the straps, it's very important that they're nice and straight, so they follow the ladder pattern nicely. And also it's going to be easy to pack. So we can take this UV and we just pull it down to make it straight, invert the selection by holding down Shift and dragging over all the vertices, and just unfold it. Let's do the same for the bottom. Make sure we invert the selection, but we don't select the ones we already pulled straight. Just unfold it. I'm going to take everything, unfold along U. And that's it. I'm going to repeat that for all the islands. Oh, and to do unfold along U, it's Shift, right mouse click, unfold along U, which means a horizontal unfold. So I'll pull this straight over here, why not? Maybe no. We'll create a little bit more stretching than is needed. I can pull it straight over here. And keep like these little wings. Now when you unfold, you can hold down Ctrl to do like a different unfold. So one more. Just going to click here so we can see all the stretching. Then the last thing that I want to do is take everything and click a border UV and then double click that. That's going to unselect all the borders. And we just want to do Shift right mouse click and say optimize, then hit G a few times. It's going to be getting rid of a little bit of the stretching. I want to pay close attention to the holes, that we don't get any problems with them. Just going to unfold it all. That's going to give it a little bit more UV space. And I don't care if we have a little bit of stretching over here, like that's in the hole. We can see it. And it's going to be very occluded. It's just going to be a shadow there. What we want to avoid is stuff like this, where the UVs are overlapping. And when we're done, let's go ahead and lay that out. Now we have some nice clean UVs. And we just gotta repeat it for straps too. If you want, you can like quickly align all of them by going to Arrange and Orient Shells. So these are gonna be slightly different to straighten out, because they have like this little like dip. That's the right word, I don't know. So just going to be selecting up until here and then straightening that out, just so we don't get too much stretching. Also, this is kind of like opinion based. Some people don't like to straighten the UVs out at all because they prefer to have zero stretching. I like to have some of the things a little straighter. Makes the packing easier, and it will change a little bit how the pattern will fall on it. Although it doesn't really matter with like a leather. If you have something more like a cotton, it's more important. But since leather is pretty chaotic, you can get away with the UVs being a little bit less neat. Finally, let's go ahead and lay this out. Let's take all our straps UVs, we're gonna lay that out together and move it off to the side. Now that we've straightened all of these UVs out, we're also gonna go ahead and do a mirror again. Just like that. So before we get to actually laying out the UVs, I want to quickly showcase why we straightened some of the elements and not other ones. For example, we straighten these because the mesh is already almost perfectly straight. Now, for example, you could be looking at this UV and thinking, hey, we could straighten that into a rectangle. But if we go ahead and give that a try, you can notice that like it starts to stretch a little bit too much in my opinion. If we put the check on here, make it bigger, we can see stretching better. So you can see over here it's not bad. Then around the middle they start stretching pretty bad. Like this square's almost twice the width as these. So if we avoid straightening it, you can see the squares are a lot more even and we have much less stretching. Okay, so let's talk about laying out UVs, packing UVs. The main thing to look out for is like, what are your big islands? So those are gonna be these two. These are gonna ask for a lot of space on the UVs. Then we can take these. These are gonna be pretty much hidden. We don't really see them, except for some of these border ones. So we're just gonna shrink the selection. That's by hitting Shift and then the key that looks like this. Take a look. Let's also get rid of that, just so it's a little bit nicer. I guess we don't care about, do we? Just to be safe, I'm gonna get rid of those as well. Maybe shrink it one more time. So we can pretty confidently say everything here of the armor, you're not gonna be seeing. Like we're gonna have the body inside, then we'll have like a little bit of open space where we do care about the UVs, but all these we don't care about. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go and map and normal based map, just to cut that out. Let's do the same over here. I guess over here it doesn't really matter. The UVs are not that big. So I'm just gonna keep them as they are. Now let's go back to armor 1. I'm gonna put these to the side as well. And these are gonna be our main two big UVs. So the biggest UV decides how much resolution you're gonna get in your model. So just want to be messing with these UV islands and I want to try to make them fit. Since I don't care about the directionality of the pattern, we can like start to move them and see if we can rotate them in a way that we get more space. Okay, if we move this like this, it fits nicely in each other. So this is probably the most optimal way of laying them out. Can we get more space like that? Nope. Okay, so let's go with this. Now the important thing, if we go to transform, and we say get, I want to make sure that this value is the same. This is the texel density. How many pixels like each UV piece has. So right now I want to keep a little bit of distance from the border and try to make them as big as we can. So this is probably the biggest that we can get away with. Also make sure to have a little bit of edge padding. Edge padding is that the islands are not super close to each other. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the armor 2. Because these are pretty big chunks as well. And we're going to see if we can fit that in here. And I'm pretty confident if we can fit this all together, that the rest of the open space we can fit the other pieces in. So we're just going to be saying set, so that matches the size. Again, we're going to be looking for the most optimal way of placing these. So maybe like this, and then this one. I feel like that is not bad. So I'd say that's the best way we can fit it, probably. Maybe if we place this here. As you can see, we're crossing more at the border. Like right here, we have quite a big chunk. If we have this over here, we only pass it slightly. So now we're just going to take this and we're going to scale this all down until it fits in our UV space. Something like that. Make sure it's not too close to the border. So this optimally the biggest size that we can get, probably. I'm just going to see if we could fit that here now that it's smaller, just to make it look a little bit nicer, but probably not. Nope. Because if we do that, we need to scale them down even more, meaning that we're losing resolution. Now these UVs look quite funny. As you can see, this is pretty much the optimal way of putting them to maximize space. So we're going to be putting these pieces to the side. These are like questionable pieces, like, okay, we can kind of make them smaller and maybe do some weird cuts to make it fit. We're going to be putting these like, okay, we don't care about the size of those at all. So let's start introducing some more. The straps are going to be pretty important as well. And then the buckles, they can probably fit anywhere on the UV space. So I'm going to say get and set. Now again, we have important UVs and unimportant UVs. All the back UVs, the one where you can see there's no bevel, we're not going to be seeing those. So we take a look. I guess some of them you can see a little bit. Okay, these we don't see at all. Let's just do a quick layout because they're overlapping. And same for these. So again, do a set to set the correct size. Now we want to see if we can fit the important pieces in our UV layout. If not, it means that we have to take this and make it smaller. And I think we're gonna have to make it a little bit more small in the end to fit like some of these, but I'm not sure yet. For now, we're just trying to see if we can get away with this resolution. And these, I don't want to be like twisting too much like this, because the directionality on them is not super important, because again, that is quite chaotic, but it will definitely be nice to have them all straight. Now the reason why I like to pack by hand instead of like an automatic packer is because an automatic packer doesn't take stuff into consideration. Like, I will just try to find the most optimal way of laying out your UVs as the UVs are right now. But like I was saying, for example, these, like we could start like introducing some weird UV cuts on them because it doesn't really matter, which will make the packing way better. Now, an automatic packer is not going to create cuts and try to find the most optimized layout that way. We'll just look to how your islands are right now and then find the most optimized layout for that, which isn't ideal in my opinion. Although it's nice to save some time. And if you know, like, okay, I cannot make any more cuts and I don't want to have like some UVs smaller than others, then it's not bad to use a packer. But again, like I said, for example, these, like you don't really see, maybe like we end up making them smaller and whatever. So again, these are all the UV pieces we don't see of the straps. Just gonna double check that. Okay, we don't see them. Also, let's make sure, just by hitting 5, that the UVs are facing the right way. These are the mirrored ones. You go ahead and flip. Just do that one by one, so they don't change the place. Like I was saying, these we can make a little bit smaller if we need to make them fit better, because we won't see them. Now there's no reason to just make them as small as possible. Just scale them down a little bit so they fit where you want them to fit. Maybe something like that. And we have one final piece. And this one we don't see. This one we don't see either. I think I'll just place them right here and scale them down a bit. Just kind of looking where I want to place this. Maybe we can move this up a little bit and rotate it, just so we can fit that here. And again, these we don't really see. A little bit actually, so let's not mess with them too much. But for example, this area, we will never see. Maybe very, very slightly. So I'm not too worried about doing a soft select. I'm just shrinking this down a little bit. Same here. Just so it fits a little bit nicer and we have more edge padding. And here, let's try to get a better edge padding. Just like that. So now it's getting a little bit more interesting. Now we got these last big pieces that we need to kind of work away in the unwrap. First thing, let's set the size. It's okay. We can definitely say this one is going to be way more important than the others. Like this one we cannot mess with. This is what you're going to see. Then maybe as a safety, we'll take this one as well. Say, okay, maybe we see that with it. Just kind of look at it from like different views. Like imagine a body being there. We're going to say to edge parameter and cut. So let's say, okay, this, we need good resolution. Now for the back, it's going to be the same thing. We definitely need a good resolution on this. And again, let's add a little bit of a safety, just to be sure. The edge parameter and cut these two pieces. And I think we can safely say this we don't need. That's something you're never gonna see. Let's move that to here. Okay, maybe we can cut this up. Not sure, let's just put that there. Then we're left with these two big chunks. I think that's a very safe cut to make over there. This we don't really need. Now this stuff, we definitely need resolution on that. And looking at the UV, will probably be a little bit nice if we put that over there. So I'm gonna cut and move and seal. Just so the UV is a little bit more hidden in case we see it. So now that we have like this whole big chunk like cut up in pieces, we can like kind of try to find places for it in the UVs. And yeah, this is going to be quite challenging, of course. I think we can manage to kind of fit it. I do think we're going to have to scale down some of the things. So for example, one thing that we can do, this is looking pretty nice and straight. This is an awkward piece to fit. Like this is difficult, it takes up a lot of space. Like imagine a bounding box around it. We kind of need this much free UV space. Now, if we take this, straighten this out, it will let me. Now this is starting to become a lot more manageable. So imagine a bounding box around this and it's much tighter. Then okay, let's think even further. This is the one that we have for safety. Like we're probably not really gonna see this. So we can take all this and we can squash it down a little bit and move it up, sure. Because these are the only ones that we really care about. So now this is starting to look pretty manageable to fit. We have a nice small bounding box. Now we can say, okay, where can this fit? Maybe we can rotate it and move it right here. Then we're gonna need to mess with this a little bit. And you can see how we can start to try to make everything fit together without giving up the resolution. The same thing for these pieces. Let's have a look at them. Again, first thing we're looking for is just, can we straighten it? Could probably straighten this out. Will let me. Don't know why the unfold brush is not working. The same for this one. Just optimize instead of using the unfold brush. More or less the same thing. Let's try to get that to work though. Go ahead and take the top. Straighten that out. And I think we can get away with straightening the bottom. Again, you don't really see it. So if we have some stretching there, that's perfectly fine. And let's just optimize this. Check the stretching. That's looking pretty good. And again, if we compare the bounding boxes of these two, so get and set, make sure that the right size. Like this is gonna pack nice and tight. And this we're gonna need more space. You can see how we have this whole extra chunk over here. This is just gonna make it more difficult to fit tightly. That's one of the main advantages of like straightening out UVs. That becomes easier to pack nice and tight. And again, since this is like an inside part, we don't really care if we have like some stretching going on. That's perfectly okay. Just like that. We can also do the same over here. We can just straighten this out. Just like that. Now you can see we can put it really tight against the border. Go ahead and take all our UVs and start looking for placements. So I'm just going to do a get. Start double checking that these pieces are the right size. That one was quite a big difference, but that's also because we scaled like these down. If we take the size of that, that's 24, and this should be bigger. Smaller. Yeah, that's right. Like these are the big ones on top. So let's get this. This is 24. This is 30. So we're just going to scale this up by hand until that size is correct. So now the ones that we see, they're matching in size. I don't want to do the whole piece, because if I do the whole piece, it will make it bigger, because it will try to average those two out. So something to keep in mind. Let's also pull this straight against the border. You can see it's not too difficult to do UVs. It's just like putting a puzzle together. Just gotta fit the pieces. Just gonna set everything. See if there's like some big changes. So that's looking good. Only the ones that we don't really see are popping, but that's fine. So my first thought is these are probably gonna need to be in the corner. Then we're gonna need to start moving some of the other pieces around. Don't worry if the UVs overlap a little bit. We can go ahead and fix that up later. Of course, try to avoid it as much as you can, but don't get caught on that. Something like that is looking good. Let's see, what do we have left? So we have this big piece left. And again, if we were to leave it as it is, this would never work out, like impossible to fit it. So we're gonna need to make some cuts. Can probably make that same cut here. Yep, that looks fine. I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna put a triangle. So we can have a nice cut on the UV over here. Say, okay, these are not really important. Just these two pieces that we care about. It's a similar approach. We're going to take an edge. I'm going to be pulling that straight. Again, I'm hitting G to just repeat the unfold. So let's see where we can fit this stuff. Just kind of thinking. Maybe something like that. See what happens if we unstraighten this. Maybe we get lucky with a nice curvature that just follows something. Not really. Let's go back. A little bit of an awkward piece. Just gonna move all this stuff out. Probably like this. Actually, that one doesn't look too bad. We're probably gonna need to reduce a little bit the size, because this is gonna be a very rough piece to fit now. But you wanna like work through this slowly. You don't wanna like overshoot the size with like being way too small, because you can always scale stuff down, but scaling things up is gonna be a nightmare. So yeah, let's go ahead and scale everything down a little bit. Literally just gonna take all the UVs and scale that down. Move that back up. Maybe we can push this like this. See if we can fit that over there. Kinda. I think we can make that work. Seeing if this piece fits better, which it does. Incredible. Again, small overlaps are fine. We can fix that up later. For now, we're just worried about finding the ideal layout. Push this up. I think it's also about time that we start worrying about these pieces a bit more. I think we have a pretty good space here in the middle to push them in. That will probably be the way to go. And again, not really important. Let's take a look what we're gonna do with this. Like, we'll see it a little bit over here for sure. Anything crossing this edge, I don't think we're gonna see at all. This is a little risky, I would say, so let's go ahead and cut here. We don't care about that. And we don't care about that. So now this is going to be a lot better. As you can see, getting closer. Let's see what else could we do to make this fit. What we can do is we're going to put a seam in the middle. Usually seam in middle, big no-no, will show up. But over here, you're not really going to see it. Maybe a little bit there. Let's avoid the seam in the middle for now. Let's try something else. I think maybe we can get away with straightening it. Again, it's all about making it easier to fit. Like, definitely for the front pieces, we cannot straighten it. It's way too much stretching. But at the back piece that you don't really see, I'm a little bit more open to the idea. Maybe we take these and we optimize that. I can put it like this. So now we have a bounding box that's a lot easier to fit. Before we had all this open space with the V's. That's pretty much all gone. Now we can just take this. And again, remember, we don't really see it. So I'm perfectly fine just scaling that down until it kind of fits. This is an awkward piece. Let's see if we can cut that UV. Let's say we can cut it. So we can see it over there. Sure, why not? Do the same over here. So now we can fit those pieces a lot tighter. Now that works. I think this really showcases very well why I'm not a big fan of using auto packers. because you can see how much like we're messing around with cutting the UVs, scaling the UVs, trying to find the ideal layout. Just gonna scale this all down a bit. Again, we don't want to touch the first row of UVs. That's the important one at the neck. But with these we can mess around a bit. Now let's just pull those out so they have less stretching. Actually, maybe we can sew that piece back. Sew that back. Yeah, that's probably the way to go. Also get rid of the triangles that we put for the UV, because we no longer have a UV cut. Again, super unimportant UV, so we can just flatten this out. Just like that. And sure, let's optimize it a little bit, maybe. Just a tiny bit. Just so the UVs are not completely messed up. Again, these are the important UVs. Let's do a get, 24, 29. Okay, so let's scale this piece up until these reach 29. The way over. Get. That's not bad. A bit smaller. Now we can just place them back. This is overlapping quite a bit. Let's see if we can find a better spot. Something like that. That's much better. So I do think at this point the islands became so small that we might pack them a little bit different. Right now, looking at this, since our main islands, this one and this one, became small enough to fit under each other, we can probably save some more empty space. Right now, if we have like a bounding box around this is taking up a lot of space. So I don't think it's worth it anymore to have this one underneath it. But let's have a look. Probably fit that like that. So I do want to try to maybe just straighten out these top parts. Maybe that doesn't give that much stretching. That's not too bad. It's giving like some stretching at the top, but that's pretty hidden. Not the biggest fan, although I don't hate it completely. Go ahead and optimize that out. For now, we're just going to try to keep that as we have it. But if we really need to, we can go ahead and straighten that out. I think we can get away with this. This one fits pretty nicely like that. This is kind of like the annoying part of doing UVs. Is the back and forward of just trying to find a nice optimized way of putting them. It's also pretty fun to do. I think like that's not bad. I think we can make it work like this. As long as we can kind of work this piece away. Sure, we can. Yeah, like that. It's not bad at all. I'm just gonna go ahead and flip. Maybe no. Let's just keep it like this. So it's kind of like the last big chunk. Yeah, like this should be fine. If I'm not forgetting any big pieces. I think that will work. The only real question that I have is if we can kind of fit all the straps in here. Let's have a look. Also, I'm just going to get and set, make sure everything's still the right size. That one needs to be a bit bigger. Again, some of these we can ignore. It's the ones that are unimportant. Just going to move those to the side. So if we can fit all these pieces, we're good to go with the resolution. I also feel like we have more vertical space. then horizontal space. So I'm just gonna flip that all to be vertical. Again, those we don't care about. Let's just start trying to fit the biggest pieces that we have. Because if we can fit the big pieces, we can fit the small ones. And sometimes this takes like a few iterations going through the UVs if you're unlucky. And sometimes you find like the proper scale very soon. And everything just kind of falls in place the right time, the first time. But like, don't be feeling bad if you need to redo the packing 1 or 2 times. Maybe in the end we're gonna make some of these horizontal, just to make sure it fits. But just want to try to avoid it for as long as I can. Just so it's a little bit more consistent. But like this, not like a very strict rule of why we couldn't do it. So yeah, just gonna flip some of these so we can start fitting them. So again, these ones, I don't really care about the size too much. Actually, let's leave them out for now. Same for these. And all that, we don't care about the size either. So we're gonna leave this out as well. And finally, the last thing that we kind of need to pay attention to is the buckles, because they can take a little bit of space as well. So I'm gonna do get and set. If we can manage to fit these in here, it should be fine. I think that shouldn't be too much of a problem. I think we might even be able to make them a little bit bigger. Maybe not. Let's try a little bit. We're just going to be starting off with the big buckles. Trying to find a place for all of them. Also for these, I don't mind to rotate them a little bit. All I care about is trying to make them fit. I think that's the last big one. Probably fit it in here. Yep. I'm just gonna take these ones. I think we cannot really see all of these too well. I guess we can. Okay, let's just give them some space. I do think the big ones are pretty safe to make super small. Yeah, those we're never gonna see. So move those over here. Again, I'm always kind of taking a look at the UVs, like what part of the model they represent. And if we can actually see that part or not. If we cannot see it, we can always make it smaller. Go ahead and fit these little things. Actually, it's not really needed, they can fit anywhere. Same for these, I guess. So I'd say the last things to really kind of fit in are like these pieces. It would be nice to have a little bit of resolution on these, just in case we see the bottom. I don't think we have a good place for them. I think we're definitely going to cut away a little bit. Like this is probably overkill to keep that there. Go ahead and move and seal. So I'd say these pieces are kind of important, not too much. So let's see if we can give them some space. Go ahead and move this in a little bit. Again, these are more important, just to make that a little bit smaller. Let's see if we can do something here. I feel like we could put this one over here. I'm going to take all these things and move them up. Go ahead and take this, just straighten it out a little bit. Now that's going to introduce a little bit of stretching, but again, it's kind of like a back piece. I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to take this. We're just going to unstretch these, give them a little bit more space again. Move that nicely and optimize. Just gonna move this down again. Take a look if those are important at all. Okay. Don't want to mess with those too much. Prefer to just move this down a little bit. And you can see by just slightly adjusting the UVs, everything will eventually kind of fall in place. We need to move this out a little bit. We can use a soft select. I'm just gonna scale that down a little bit. Just gonna introduce like a super small bit of stretching, but that's all right. Like realistically speaking, you're never gonna notice that. This one is pretty safe to make smaller. We're not really gonna see that. Just gonna move those points in. Make sure we're not overlapping. Let's just optimize that out slightly. Again, I don't want to touch these because those are the ones we actually see. Something like that. Do the same here. Let's just slightly move this in. After you move everything in slightly, just select all, deselect the border, and do a optimize. This is just going to even out the UVs a little bit more. See what we're going to do with this piece. I feel like maybe this one can be at the side. I think that can work. Again, I'm just going to take from here at this bottom area that we're not really going to see. These I don't want to stretch at all because those are going to be visible. Let's just move this in a bit more. Something like that. Be careful with the UV there, it's overlapping. Then we're going to do the same thing as we did for the other one. Just going to flatten this out a bit. Something like that's probably fine. So make sure we move this up to the top so we can fit something over there. Again, not a very important piece over here. Let's just move that in. And let's follow the curvature. And again, by doing this, we can find way more resolution to fit the UVs in than just doing a quick outer pack. Because the outer pack will never like take the UVs and like nudge them a little bit to make them fit. At least not the ones that I know. It would be incredible if you had one that could do it. So now we're left with 3 challenging pieces, and then we fitted everything that I want to fit. So let's just have a look. think we're gonna fit this right over here. So we can just move this down. Find some new places for the buckles. Because in the end, like the challenging part is the big, long pieces to fit. Like these smaller pieces, like you can find spots for them anywhere. Again, if I have to move something out slightly, I prefer we do these inside parts as they're not really important. Like having some stretching on these is not gonna negatively impact the end result. It's just gonna allow us to put more resolution in the parts where it matters. Just take this and move this out a little bit. Just so we have some more edge padding. And that should be it. The most painful thing is now if you notice that you have like a big ass UV right here. Sometimes that happens and it's really painful. So now it's just a matter of filling up the empty spaces with like the super little elements. Take these. Let's scale them up a little bit. You can do a layout. And let's go to off, I think. Another one. Scale mode off. Just so we all have them neatly together. Make them a little bit bigger. You just want to stick them wherever you see an empty space. Same for these. Let's lay out. Again, these ones we don't see, I think. Actually, these are the ones that we do see. So we cannot mess with the size too much. Let's see the last one. Perfect. Take some of these. Again, the size doesn't matter on these. So these we're just gonna stick wherever they fit. And if they don't fit, we'll make them fit. Beautiful. What do we have here? One more. And that's definitely the most boring part of the video. But I do think it's important to show you like how I actually lay out UVs to make sure everything has a nice resolution. Like we could have done the same thing what we did now in like 15 minutes, but we'll probably would have had way less resolution. I think knowing how to really optimize your UVs is important, because you're just gonna get a much better end result. Like even if the difference doesn't seem so big, let's say if we only got like 20% more textile density, it's still like 20% more resolution while using the same texture size map. Just do a double check if we have everything. Looks like it. One final check if there's nothing important that we're not giving scale. Maybe it could be nice to give these a little bit of scale. The same goes for this one. But it's so occluded that it doesn't really matter if we can't. It'd just be a nice little bonus. But I definitely won't be like moving a lot of things around to get it. For example, we could take these. We scale this down a bit. We do something like that. We just really go extreme on the soft select. That will be fine for this piece. Again, very occluded piece in shadows. Pretty hidden away from the camera. So we don't mind if it's a little deformed. Trying to give it a little bit more even edge padding. Let's see. One more little V. It's probably over here. Again, just take those ends, soft select it until it fits. Now the ends over here, I don't think we'll ever see that. That's so hidden away. I don't mind to really distort that. Just like that. Also make sure to save sometimes. This will be super painful if your Maya crashes right now and you lose all your tight packing. Just like that. Looking good. Give this a little bit more edge padding. Edge padding just means how far the UV is from the next UV. If too close, the textures can kind of bleed into each other with the map. To be honest, it's not that important. So then we have these last pieces. Yeah, we don't care at all about them. One thing you can do is you can choose to overlay them to just get more resolution, just in case you ever see them or whatever. Or you can just make them super tiny. My preference, if I'm sure that I'm never gonna see it, is just make them super tiny and stick them anywhere. Just so you don't need to deal with like overlapping UVs with the bake and whatever. I would say like overlapping them is probably a little bit nicer to do. It's a little bit of a lazy, quick thing. But that's okay. Big bonus points as well by doing this. You can make your packing look even more tight. No one will ever know that this little island is this huge element. And that's looking good. Now, before we can call the UVs done, we need to do some checking. We need to make sure that we don't have any overlaps. What's an overlap? It's basically if two UVs cross each other. Just gonna select all these UVs and go select and go overlapping. Then didn't select anything. Let's try with UV shell. Select and overlapping. You can see it's selecting one thing. This isn't like 100% accurate. Sometimes it's just selecting stuff while it's clearly not overlapping. That happens, just kind of check it out. And I can see we have one UV that's overlapping itself. Just fix that up. So that looks good. Just gonna take off the border. And then, which one is it? That one. Just gonna check this out really quick. We do still have a few that we should have flipped. Seems like my Maya's acting up. Refusing to give me the pivot point. Try to reset. Just gonna restart my Maya really quick. So that seems to have fixed it. So let's see. Go ahead and flip the last UVs. change the background color, it's Alt-B, in case you didn't know. And I like to take off like the border and put like a color, so I can kind of see if we have any overlaps. I think we're good to go. Also, we put everything up to high, so let's go to transform and move this down. That's interesting. It's not moving that one UV. Cannot select it. When that happens, it means that you accidentally hide a face. For example, if we take a face and now we like hide it, if we try to select it, it won't select it. So you can run a script to unhide it. Easiest way to do it is just ask ChatGPT for like a Maya Python script to unhide all faces. I'll try to find one in Google, but usually I just ask AI. So one final step before we can call this done. Just gonna apply a new material. Delete the history. That can work, that'd be nice. Guess Maya doesn't wanna work with me today. Let's go to a material editor. Not quite sure which one it was, I think Lambert 3. Color, and put a checker. I just hit 6 to show that. Then we go to UV coordinates, click this, and put the repeat to like 50. We're just going to be checking if we have any outrageous stretching. You can also go to lighting and use flat lighting. Just to get the shading and shadows away. That's all looking good to go. So it took a bit, but we can officially call the UVs done. Again, a little bit of a boring part of the process, but I think it's important to show you how you can really optimize your UVs for textile density to make sure you can get the most out of your textures. So now that we're all done with the low poly, let's go ahead and move on to the final stage, which is going to be baking our high poly. So to start off, we're going to need to export our low poly. The way we do that is we open up the scripting editor, and then we're just going to export our stuff. First, let me go ahead and click over here. Then we click Armor 1. Now, if you haven't worked with the script editor, it will basically tell you everything that Maya is doing. This way you can very easily create a script. So now we're just going to go File, Export Selection. And let's call this Armor 01. Now we're going to go ahead and repeat this. We're just going to be doing this for every single one. So now that we're done with that, the last thing I want to do is just unselect everything by clicking in the viewport. So right now, we basically made a script to export our low poly. We can take everything here, Ctrl+C, and then we can open up a notepad. If you haven't worked with the script editor before, I recommend that you try to get a little bit familiar with this, as it's super useful to work with. So basically what we're looking here is a command for everything we do. And the command is a select command and an export command. And then we have a comment. A comment isn't code, it's just there to document something. We can go ahead and delete all these comments to clean up the script a little bit. Or you can leave them in if you prefer to do it. I like to always get rid of them, so my script looks a little bit more clean. Then we can add some spacing, sure. This is our export script. Now we can just take this and we can drag it to the shelf. Now it's going to ask if you want to save as Mel or Python. I'm going to use Mel because that's what we're using. You can see it because we're on Mel. Mel is Maya's like native scripting language. Then we can right click this, click edit, shelves, and call this export. Export for short, click enter and save all shelves. So now anytime we want to export a low, we can just click this button and we'll export our low poly. This is very useful if we need to make some changes to our low poly, so we can quickly export everything again without like going through different files and looking for the lows and whatever. Then we're gonna go ahead and go to Marmoset. I recommend that you take a quick screenshot of your groups in Maya, because we're gonna replicate the folder structure. So we're gonna click over here, new bake project, and then we get a bake group. Just gonna duplicate this a few times by hitting Ctrl D. Then we're gonna start renaming these groups. Made one too many, let's delete. So just like that. Then let's go ahead and import our low poly. So we go to File, Import, and then we can just take our low polys that we just exported using this script. Then we say Open. Then we're just going to be placing these in the correct folder. Armor 1 in low. If you do have like a whole character, I would recommend that you find or like ask AI to create a script for this, as it will save a lot of time. Some people like to use the quick loaders and use like FBXs. I'm not really a fan of working with FBX, because let's say if you want to change a single part in the high poly, and you've exported your high poly as an FBX, and it's like a heavy 5 GB FBX file. If you want to make a small adjustment to export that again, it will take a long time, instead of just exporting one subtool again. So having said that, now we're also going to be importing our high poly. For this, we just go to the File Explorer, we go to Armor 1, and we drag it in. Then we just put that in the high, and that's it. I'm going to be repeating that for every group. So just like that. Now that we have our bake group set up, let's quickly save. And that's going to be it. So now I want to really quickly show you like the power of the script that we did. So at any point, if we need to make some changes, let's say this needs to be bigger for whatever reason, and we say export, you can go back to Marmoset and you can see it will update automatically. Just going to undo that, export again. So this is very useful when we're baking and we notice that might be a small issue in the UVs or in the shading, to quickly go back and forward to mess with the topology and quickly see the result. So let's go ahead and set up our actual bake. First thing, let's just go to Bake Project. I'm going to change the format to 16 and the resolution to 4K. Let's put the samples as high as it gets. Set up a name. This is kind of up to you, the file format. I would either go with PSD or PNG. Use PSD if you don't mind like a heavier file. Use PNG if you want to try to keep it a little bit more compact. One thing to keep in mind, the bigger your bake files are, the bigger the substance Painter project is going to be, and the longer it's going to take to work with Painter. Like doing a save will be a lot slower. For now, we're going to be using PNG, but feel free to use PSD. Just going to call this Armor and say save. Then let's go ahead and choose the maps that we want. I'm going to configure. Want to add the height, position, cavity, thickness. Don't need material ID. We do need vertex color. Vertex color is the poly paint that we added in ZBrush. And that looks good. Go ahead and undo. I'm going to turn everything off except for the normal map. I'm going to be trying our first bake. To do that, just say start and let's see what happens. Then we say preview material to see our bake. This is going to be a little bit hard to see, so we're going to change some of the settings up. First we go to sky. Instead of like this blobby color, let's go ahead and choose a different color. Maybe a nice dark color. Then let's go to main camera. I always like to just put this way up. Let's go with 65. Just so we have less perspective distortion. Now it's still quite difficult to see the bake. One thing that I like to do is just to go here and put up the clarity. You can see if we put this down, it becomes super hard to see. The higher the clarity, the more clear the bake usually gets. Put this to something like 3. That's going to be a lot easier to see. That's all looking pretty good. So I'm not a big fan of like trying to check the mesh if everything's baking perfectly in Marmoset, because I think it's a little bit hard to actually navigate and just kind of really look at it. And for that reason, I like to put my bake in Maya. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our low group and assign a new blin material. Blin because we want something more shiny. This bake MTL for material. Go to bump, put this to file. Very important. Change from bump to tangent space normal. Now we can put a file. We're just going to be browsing to our bake. Then we want to go ahead and edit. Now nothing will happen. We got to click 6 to preview the texture. You'll see everything will look very weird because we need to change the color space from sRGB to raw. Now you can see we can preview our bake in Maya. Just going to disable the ambient occlusion so you can see a little bit better. At this point we can actually like come in real close and nice. We can take like an element, put that in solo, and really like try to see if the bake is looking good. At this point I'm just looking for any baking issues. Baking issues are more likely to appear in areas where you have like some bad shading. For example, when we have like tight shading, I'll also make sure to double check those areas if that's all baking fine. Of course, at the borders, try to take a good look. For example, let's say if we had this vertex and this one didn't really match the high. It was like way out of place. If we export this, and Marmoset, let's do that bake again. Also, one thing that I would recommend is bake mode. I think it's called offline. This just makes sure it doesn't like bake the second that you switch to Marmoset. It's a little bit annoying, and it can make Maya crash if it's baking and you try to reload the texture. So now if we reload the texture, by reloading you just click 5 and 6, that reloads the texture. You can see that this looks way off. We have this whole black piece because it's not capturing anything. Our high poly is right here. So these are other things that I'm looking for. It's like, okay, are all the edges okay? Just gonna export this again and rebake. If you have a slower computer or you're baking like a lot of things, I recommend to just lower the samples way down and maybe go with half the format just to keep it fast. Because at this point we just care about the bake. We're trying to see if we have any issues going on. It's just a little intersection. Can fix that up later. Okay, so I think the bake is going well. Let's go ahead and test the next map. That's going to be the ambient occlusion. So we're just going to bake that again. So now Maya, let's go ahead to our bake material. This one we're going to put an ambient color. Take our armor and just load that. Now what we can do with the ambient occlusion, we can go to color balance and we can put the exposure down or up just to get like a different look. And just choose something that you like the way it looks. For me, I think like this looks pretty nice. And for the ambient occlusion, like all that we're really looking for is like black spots appearing. For example, in the high poly, sometimes you have the back faces. I say that. You have the back faces like intersecting with the front faces on top. And they go over them. And that way like you get some weird black spots. I'm just kind of looking for that. But everything looks fine. These are the only two maps that I really check. If your normals and ambient occlusion is baking fine, that should mean that all your maps are baking fine. I do want to showcase one thing. If we go back here, also let's say preview material to see the ambient occlusion right here. If we go here, we have some settings that we can mess with. The most important one, in my opinion, is the ray count. I'm just going to lower this way down to 32. And the lower this is, the faster the AO bake happens. So now if we go back to Photoshop, I loaded our bake here. This is our default one, that was 128. If we put the new one on top, you can see the difference that ray count makes. It's basically the higher your ray count, the more iterations like it has, the more light it reflects, and the less noisy your ambient occlusion is gonna look like. So the default 128 is not bad, but you do see we do get some noise, not as much as all the way at 32. So what I recommend, if you have the time, like just put this way up. For example, we can go to 48. Also depends on how good your computer is, of course. And do this like at the end when you're sure that your stuff is baking well. So you're not like wasting time on like a bake that takes longer. See how much longer that's taking. Now if we go back to Photoshop, we put our new bake here. Let's call this 248. Let's call this 32. We can just compare the differences. So at the lowest ray count, a lot of noise. Then we get a little bit of noise. And at 248, you can see how clean that ambient occlusion is starting to look like. I don't know if you can see it like really well in the video because YouTube compresses the quality. But you can just do this for yourself and see how clean it is. I think 4K rays is a bit overkill, but if you want, why not? Like, it will just become more clean. Then what I do want to talk about is ambient occlusion. Like, ambient occlusion is a little bit of an annoying map, meaning that this map will never bake perfectly. It will always need some cleanup. So what does that mean? In some cases, it doesn't really matter. I think in our case, it's fine. Like, we don't have to do it. It will just start looking a little bit better if we do it. So I'm going to show you. So the main problem with our ambient occlusion is this. We can see that all our rivets, like, they're not really matching, as you can see. And that's because the high poly, like the volume is bigger on them. So it's more like that, right? So that's causing a mismatch in the shadows. So what else? You usually get like some errors. In our case, they're pretty well hidden, but of intersections. In our case, I don't think we can really see any of them. We can see the straps a little bit, as you can see. Maybe that one is a bit ugly. It's from the fibers that we added to the leather. The other side's looking okay. It's okay. Let's focus on that. So we can go here. We can just see, okay, what is looking bad. I definitely don't want those fibers to show up on the ambient occlusion. So we can create a new layer. Also, let's just double check the one that we're fixing. That's over here. UV editor. Those are over here. So that's in fact the correct one. The first thing that I like to try is the spot healing brush and see if I can kind of fix those thingies up. Make sure you sample all layers. And we can just drag that out. See if we can get that fixed. Something like that. That's like a little bit better, but looks a little strange. So then what we're gonna do is go to the smudge tool and just stroke that left to right, and that's gonna like blend that in. It's like a blending tool. Just gonna make sure I sample all the layers. Push stuff out a little bit. Like that, you can see we can clean the ambient occlusion up a little bit. Now if we go ahead and save this, just save over the bake that we did. Make sure they're using the smallest file size. It's just gonna do a better compression. Quality won't change. It's just gonna make it smaller, which is very nice for Painter. Then when we go back to Maya, just gonna take a really quick screenshot, add it to the PureRef. Now when we reload, it's gonna reload the texture by 5 and 6. You can see that little imperfection is gone. So the reason why this is happening on the ambient occlusion and not on any of the other maps is because we have this. On the ambient occlusion, we're saying ignore the bake groups. And the reason why we want to ignore the bake groups is because we do want to catch the shadow of the straps on the armor. But we just don't want all the little things that are like imperfect. Like we can see we're getting some imperfections. So if you want like the perfect looking bake, you do need to come in to your ambient occlusion maps and just kind of fix that up. We can use the spot healing and the smudge. Those are like my main tools for cleanup. Wherever it's bad, you just kind of go like that, and that's pretty much it. If you do want to get like really overkill on like how clean everything is, one thing that you could also do is like all the sharp outlines, just kind of smudge them so they become like more shadow-like. Now personally, I don't really do this because it's like insane to do this over a whole character. But if you're working on like something and you want it to look like as perfect as you want as possible, you could do that. But again, I don't recommend it. I would just do like a really quick 5-minute cleanup for the ambient occlusion maps to fix some of the things up. And again, you can do this like really rough. Like you don't need to go ahead and check the ambient occlusion map after every little edit you do. At the end, you can always turn off the layer, erase some of the layer if you made a mistake somewhere. But like usually they become pretty obvious, like this looks weird, so we're just gonna get rid of it. Any stuff like this, if you want your map to be a little bit more clean, you can also just literally like start painting stuff to kind of fix those hard transitions. Same for this, like you could start painting that, make everything a little bit softer. But again, super overkill, usually I don't do it. This, even though we don't see it, you could still kind of clean it up because it's a very big chunk. And same, literally just take everything, spot healing, and it will be fixed. We could just smudge that out. Again, smudge is like a blend. Whenever you have like big chunks like this, it's like an intersection. And if you know like everything here is in the shadow, you might as well just say, okay, I'm gonna make sure everything here is actually in a shadow. Again, this stuff you probably will never see, so don't stress it. Only do it if you have like some time to spend on it. And you just want to make sure that it's looking as good as it can. But again, for the 5th time, super overkill to do this. So then the big thing that we had was these things. So it's kind of 2 options. We can color select this. We can start to like do something like this to make sure we don't have like that ugly, like harsh line, but that's going to be a lot of work. Actually, one more thing that we could try. So I'm just gonna close this. We're going to duplicate this and layer 1 and just merge the layers. I'm going to put a levels. Something like that doesn't look too bad. I'm trying to create like a solid outline, like that. I want to make sure this is like all nice. Put the hardness up a little bit. So now that we have this, we're just going to merge this together. Actually not. That's the fixed one. It's already merged together. So now we can use this as a mask to select from. You can take this, take the magic wand tool, and just select shift to add. I'm going to be selecting all these masks that we made. That's the reason why we wanted a solid black outline. So Photoshop knows into where to select. Okay, now we're going to create a new layer and put this in a mask. And then just mask that with our mask. Now we can delete the black and white thing that we created. Now anything we add in this layer is just going to be what we masked. So that's over here. Alt click on the mask to see it, alt click to unsee it. Let's just do layer, new fill layer. I'm going to do a solid color. Now let's zoom in, double click so we can choose a color. We're just going to choose a color right here. Now you can see we've successfully filled up all the balls, except for one that we, I guess, forgot to select. So for this one, I'm just going to be painting the mask by hand. But you can see this is a lot more annoying to do for every single mask that you have to do. Something like this. Now we can still see a little bit of an artifact. We have this thin white line, meaning that the mask didn't get far enough. So control click the mask channel. This is going to select the mask, select, modify and expand. Let's try to expand this by 2 pixels. Maybe that's too much. Actually, I think that's fine. Modify, expand 2 pixels. Delete layer mask and just mask that again. Now you can see everything's masking much better. This looks ugly because we have this jagged pixelated edge. So go filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. We just add a slight blur to this. Something like that. So I guess we forgot it at both sides. I do recommend to save this file as a PSD, just so you can make adjustments if you need later on, if you accidentally mess something up. Guess we forgot a lot of them. That should be it. So let's go ahead and save and take a look how that's looking. Just for my sanity, I'm gonna take that last one and paint it away. Let's have a look. So before we can see all these awkward white lines. That's looking much better. We are gonna adjust the rivets a little bit though, like I said. They've lost some of the shape of the high poly. We take the high poly back. You can see that they're taking up less space. Take the vertices and inflate them. Something like that. Now also, since we do have that bake, we can see how that looks on our shadow. It also looks like it fits a lot better. Probably make it a little bit bigger, just to make sure it fits the shadow better. It's looking good. Also, we did have something that looked weird with the intersection. See if it's still there. Yeah, that one. So what you can do, if you have your low group ready, you need to make adjustments. You can put this out and we can call this final mesh or whatever. We can just hide the bake group. Then over here we can make any adjustments that we need to our mesh. Now I don't want to do this in the bake group, because I wanted to keep like nicely capturing our high poly for a better bake. But if you have any awkward intersections that need fixing, we can just do that over here. Now for the rivets, I don't mind to like make them a little bit bigger in the bake group, because that's not going to affect the bake on them. But moving this stuff around definitely will. Then this is the mesh that we're going to be using to texture and to render. Don't like that little thingy on the AO, so we can just see where that buckle is. We can fix this up. Just taking a look at some of the other buckles. Let's save. So let's go ahead and finish up the bake. Now that we know that everything's baking fine, just gonna enable all of our maps and do a bake. Disable ambient occlusion, otherwise you're gonna go and bake over your fixed map. Also, like fixing baked maps, usually you don't have to do it. Like you shouldn't have to do a lot of like manual fixing in the normals and whatever. If you feel like you have to, it means that something isn't baking right. It means that your low poly, either the UV, so the topology, the shading, there's an issue there. Although in some rare cases, there's like some messy stuff in the normals that you sometimes fix. But if you feel like you're fixing a lot, take a second look at your low poly. So the only thing that we do need to check is the poly paint. So an albedo map, just click that and add the vertex color. And this way we can kind of see if there's some issues as well. I like to go to camera, full quality, and go to, where is it? Render passes, material, and albedo. Just as a really quick debug. I won't put this in Maya, because everything should be fine. It's just like a double check. That's all looking good to go. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Our bakes are officially done. So there's one map that I forgot to bake. That's gonna be our stitch map. So the way we can bake that is we go to configure and do material ID. Then what we want to do is create a new material. Give that a different color, for example red. Then just drag and drop it on the stitches. That's looking good. So let's go ahead and bake. Then let's go ahead and open that in Photoshop. Now we're gonna have this colored mask with the stitches in a different color. Because we have two materials, that means we have two colors. Just do a black and white. The red is not stitches, so let's turn that down. Then let's turn up the blue, because the blue is the stitches. Now we have a black and white mask of our stitches. Then just go ahead and save that again. That's it for the bakes.